Happiness or meaning?
Well,
which would you pick?
I'm actually a big believer in the principles of Christianity. I think they're very good.
So in what sense then are you not religious?
In this interview, Jordan Peterson presses Elon Musk on his religious beliefs, and he gets told that he needs Jesus and he needs Christianity. And there are a few points of contention in this debate where Elon Musk gives in, Jordan Peterson helps him elucidate his own view here. And it's really interesting. So I'm just going to go ahead and play a few clips here, and I'll have a few comments in between.
Okay, so you're a very wealthy man. You could give your children anything they ever asked for. Okay, so why not do it? Why not every time they ask for something, why not just deliver it?
You know, there's some wisdom that comes through the ages that you don't want to have someone be a spoiled brat.
And why do you think giving people everything they want exactly when they want it necessarily produces that? Because it seems to.
I think it almost always is.
Okay, you had a rough childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, like rough and tumble, rough childhood. Plenty of fights, and a father who was a difficult creature to contend with. Okay, what did that do for you? Why aren't you bitter about that? Because that's a pathway that people take.
I think that there are one can take, and often people do take, the path of vengeance.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And justify it by recourse to the reality of their own suffering,
exactly.
Which is often intense, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So the story of Job, one of the things I concluded from the story of Job, because it's a precursor to the crucifixion story. So Job makes two decisions. The first decision is that no matter how terrible things become for him, he will not lose faith in himself. Mm-hmm. And the second is no matter what horrors are visited on him by Satan himself, he will not lose faith in the, what would you say, in the spirit that gave rise to the cosmic order. Right, no matter what.
Well, so, you know, while I'm not a particularly religious person, I do believe that the teachings of Jesus are good.
This is an interesting interview because you can tell that Jordan Peterson has an ulterior motive here, and it looks like he's building the groundwork for pushing him to reconnect with his roots in Christian values and just being a Christian in general and believing those axiomatic claims of Christianity. And this interview could be a partial response to Elon's interview with the Babylon Bee, where they asked him to come to Christ, and he kind of referenced the God of Spinoza, which is like a deistic God, like a hands-off God that made the universe, then takes a hands-off approach, which is not the same conception of the monotheistic Christian God. And so it looks like Jordan Peterson is trying to bridge the gap between those two views and see if he can bring him closer to Christ. So let's see where he takes this next.
There's tremendous wisdom in turn the other cheek. And for a while there, when I was saying, I thought, well, that's really a weak thing to do.
Yeah, it can be.
If someone, and with respect to bullies at school, I think you shouldn't turn the other cheek. You should punch them on the nose, and then thereafter make peace with them. But they need to stop bullying you, and a punch on the nose will stop that, and then thereafter, you know, make peace. Anyway, so
why not bitterness?
This notion of forgiveness is important. I think it's essential because if you don't forgive, then, you know, I forget who said it, but an eye for an eye makes everyone blind.
There are anthropological speculations that we were caught in a 350,000-year cycle of not getting anywhere after modern human beings emerged precisely because of that.
Yeah, so I'm actually a big believer in the principles of Christianity. I think they're very good.
So in what sense then are you not religious? Dawkins just came out 3 weeks ago or thereabouts and announced that he was a cultural Christian, right? And so the question...
Right, I would say I'm probably a cultural Christian.
Okay, so...
I was brought up as an Anglican, and I was baptized. And although, oddly enough, my parents also simultaneously sent me to a Jewish nursery school. So it was Jesus our Lord.
Well,
you know,
the Jews have a reputation for being religious too, you know.
Yeah, no, I might have been the only non-Jewish kid at the school. I didn't even realize that was the thing. So that is my upbringing.
So when Dawkins announced he was a cultural Christian, the question that came to my mind right away was, okay, there's a bunch of things going on there. The first is Dawkins' proclamation or admission that if you compared different societies and their axiomatic suppositions, he would prefer the ones predicated on Christian axiomatic assumptions.
I do think those are good ones.
Okay, so that's why I asked you the question about why you would consider yourself not a religious person, because it seems to me that the essence of it isn't the statement that you abide by a particular Protestant creed, let's say. It seemed to be much more akin to the notion that this set of axiomatic presuppositions is like the pronatalist presumption. It's correct, like it's not correct.
It's going to lead to a better society, a society I think that we would prefer to be.
So here we saw that Jordan Peterson was really trying to align Christianity as far as the practical outcomes of Christianity on societies with Elon's axiomatic views of what he wants a society to look like, high birth rates, high outcomes of well-being. And we see that Christian societies are the ones that are most aligned with that. The antinatalist view is a secular, humanist, materialist view that is in contradiction to traditional Christian values. And so Peterson is showing him how that his view already aligns with Christianity. But next, he's going to dive a little deeper on Elon's religious views, try and press him a little bit and try to bring him closer to Christ. And then at the very end, he's going to try and convert him. So let's go see how that works.
What will result in the greatest happiness for humanity, considering not just the present, but all future humans?
Happiness or meaning?
Well,
which would you pick?
Personally, I'd pick meaning, because for me, meaning leads to happiness. But I think that's...
Right, but the reverse isn't necessarily the case.
Yeah, but I think if a set of principles is likely to lead to a society thinking of themselves as happy or content, or
well, okay,
then you want to then principles that lead to the most amount of happiness over time.
Yeah.
Not just the present.
Yeah. That iteration element's important.
Yeah. Because you have to consider the happiness of future humans as well.
I think that's where the ethos actually develops, is that it's a consequence of iterated games.
Sure.
And it looks to me, given what you've already told me about the way that you resolved your existential crisis, is that you consistently pick that's adventure reward fundamentally over contentment. Now, you like your kids and you're content with them, I presume, when you're playing, but the way that you found meaning in your life is not through contentment, it's through adventure. That seems to me the case.
Well, it's not adventure for the sake purely of adventure. I do like adventure, and I've never really personally found it compelling to, say, climb Mount Everest.
Yeah. You're doing it conceptually.
Conceptually and from a knowledge standpoint.
Yeah.
Knowledge Mount Everest.
Right, so it's adventure. It's adventure with a destination in mind, right? And you already described the destination. It's the destination is deep understanding.
Yes, to deepen our understanding of the nature of the universe. I guess could call it a religion. I wouldn't be upset about that. That is my religion, for lack of a better way to describe it. Is really, it's the religion of curiosity, the religion of greater enlightenment. And then if you follow that, so like that's the goal, then what falls out of that goal? What falls out of that goal is to have consciousness expand. So I think it's probably good to have multiple religions and have different perspectives on things. And so what falls out of that is we need to take a set of actions that increase the probability that the future will be good for humanity.
Well, so one of the things I derived from this analysis I've been doing of the Old Testament is that faith and courage. I'll give you an example. So when Moses is on the verge of the Promised Land, he sends scouts out to check out Canaan, because that's the promise. Mm-hmm. Now, Canaan is the home of the descendants of Cain. It's the place of people who aren't aiming up, put it that way.
All right.
Okay, so the scouts go out to look at the future, and they come back in two teams. And one team says, there's nothing but giants there. It's a complete bloody catastrophe. You led us out into the desert stupidly. We were better off in the tyranny. There's no way we're going to survive, right? And the next scouts, or the other set of scouts, Caleb and Joshua, come back and say, well, there's trouble there, but if we aim up and we get our act together, we can turn this into the Promised Land. And the earth opens up and swallows up the faithless scouts. And it's the people who are led by Caleb and Joshua, who has the same name as Christ, by the way, and that's relevant. They're the ones that are led into the Promised Land. Okay, so what's the meaning of the story? Well, the future's always a challenge. And
Yes.
the moral thing to do is to evince faith and courage in the future, regardless. In some ways, it's a weird thing because it's kind of regardless of the data. Because you can say, well, look at all the suffering that constitutes life and look at all the potential horrors of the future. And certainly people do hesitate about bringing a child into a world like this.
That's I hear that often. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's an ethical requirement that's associated with living in the manner that would justify your life even to yourself, to have faith and courage in the future, no matter what.
Sure.
Right? So it's not a foolishness or what? Defense against death anxiety or foolish superstition, that faith. It's not that at all. It's a kind of courage. It's like, we're going to make this work.
Yeah.
We're going to make this work. And a child is a vote in that direction.
A child is a vote for the future.
Yeah.
Sure.
There isn't anyone more entertaining to associate with than little kids, because partly I think it's because they're not as cortically inhibited. So you're all filtered in and, you see the presumptions everywhere. And then a child comes along and you think, oh yeah, that's an amazing thing. And I've forgotten all about that.
Sure.
I replaced my perception with my memory. Right. And so children reopen that.
Yeah.
That's also why I think it says in the Gospels that unless you become like a little child, you can't enter the kingdom of heaven, because you have to make contact with that untrammeled perception that existed before you ossified your perceptions into your foolish and often nihilistic habits.
So this was a really interesting interview that kind of pretty much stops at this point talking about religion. Elon pivots pretty hard and Jordan goes with it. But I mean, there's going to be a couple of comments that I'm already seeing about this. Jordan not being a real Christian, which honestly, I don't think he's a legitimate Christian at this point. Obviously, only God knows the heart. I haven't seen him talk about Jesus enough. Here he's talking about like the metaphysical claims and how, the symbolism and the metaphors and the syllogisms and the allegories in the Bible can relate to real life and how that bears out and how these symbols and archetypes play out in scripture. And so you can see that Peterson's getting closer. He's not all the way there. And people could make that argument that the blind leading the blind. And again, he's closer than Elon is to being a Christian. And one thing we need to remember is Elon was at the forefront of the AI, revolution. He was one of the starting guys with OpenAI. He's spoken about how AI could be the new God, the new Egyptian God, and just talking a lot about how expanding consciousness is a net good because consciousness is a good thing and only humans have that, real consciousness. And so kind of creating AI units is almost one of those ways to expand consciousness, which is like a transhumanist approach, which does seem to fall in the face of Christian values. And so we can see there is a little bit of a contradiction there. And I think with Elon specifically, the biggest issue is pride, and that's a really big issue we see in modern culture in the West today, just in general, like live your truth culture, moral relativism. The truth is what I want it to be. My preferences are what the truth is. We see a lot of this bearing out in modern culture. So I do think there is a bit of how Western society has shaped Elon's view on religiosity in general, even though he seems to be a pretty innovative, original thinker. He isn't thinking from first principles here, and he is a first principles guy. He's the guy who promoted first principles thinking when talking about how you should think critically about things. And it seems that a lot of his general views are stemming from this Western materialist, transhumanist sort of push in the West, which is the antithesis to Christianity, really. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out in the future. Obviously we need to pray for Jordan Peterson and Elon to become closer to Christ and pray that he gets in front of a good Christian apologist or a good Christian thinker that can really show him that there's no logical way for him to hold the axiomatic claims that he holds without believing in Christianity as the one true religion. And so maybe that'll happen soon. It looks like Elon is open to these conversations, which is great. And he is one of the guys at the forefront of the AI tech revolution. And so we definitely want him to be a Christian if he's developing these technologies. We've seen a lot of Marxist anti-God implementations within these AI units. And so that'd be huge to have a Christian in that space. Elon it still seems like we need to put a little bit more work into that. And for him specifically, I do think it is a pride issue. And so I think we should end, praying for them. And then I'll see you guys in a future video.